it's Alexa, and I wanted to share a special interview I did with Scott Smith. Now, he reached out to me a few weeks ago and explained that he purchased my class, Confidence on Camera, in August of 2018. But it was only 3 weeks ago that he shared with me his very first video. Now, I was super impressed for two reasons. Number one, his video is awesome. But number two, I thought, good for you. Because it doesn't matter when you bought the course. The fact is, sometimes these things take time. But to stick with it, to make it happen, and then to have that little blast of courage to send it my way, why not? So bravo to Scott, and he graciously agreed to chat with me about his experience, and I'm sharing it with you so that you can gain some encouragement, excitement, enthusiasm, perseverance for your own, video making journey. So without further ado, here is Scott. Scott, I am absolutely so thrilled to meet you because I think it was 3 weeks ago, maybe a month, maybe more. Time is a little slippery now. You shared with me that you're a student of Confidence on Camera, right?
Right.
And you sent me your video, which I thought was incredible. But the part that really made my heart soar was when you shared that that you've been a student for 5 years.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
I celebrate that. I celebrate that because of I think that there's no such thing as like it's never too late ever. And sometimes we buy things and then we forget it. And then when we don't complete it, it like gnaws at us. And you completed it, which is fantastic. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your story, what inspired you to start making videos, and a little bit about your background.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is that we tend to overestimate what we can do in 1 year. I'm going to get my finances together. I'm going to get my relationships together. I'm going to pay off my car. I'm going to do this. And, and then that year goes by and we tend to not do all of that. But the other part of that thing is we tend to overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 10. And that's been attributed to many different people. But I heard that years ago and it's always stuck with me. And I'm an old film school guy that started out thinking I was going to be the next Steven Spielberg, which you kind of have to be when you go to film school. And then somewhere along the line, you get slapped down a few times. And I've been fortunate enough to be resilient all these years and to actually, I mean, I went to film school when it was film, and then it became video, and then now it's digital. And I've just survived all these years. It kind of when you do your first student film, you're kind of the cameraman, the producer, the director, the writer, the editor. It's a great experience because you have to do it all. And then as you move up into classes, you have crews and you get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you kind of feel like, man, I'm really making progress here. And then you get out of school and you realize there's a whole another sea of people that are doing the same thing. And it's no different when I got out of school back in the 80s to when it is right now, because after the strike, I just read an article, I think it was in Variety or the Hollywood Reporter, that talked about all the crews are talking about where's the work.
Yeah,
And
it's really real,
so,
especially, I mean, I live in Los Angeles, so I know a lot of people in the industry. Things are changing, and the repercussions from the strike are devastating to so many people in
yeah,
the
and
industry.
that's probably, David Mamet once, the playwright David Mamet said that theater is always dying and it's always being reborn. And the first way that I saw things dying when I was in the 80s was, man, there's just a zillion people ahead of me that want to do this. And they were starting this thing in Orlando called Hollywood East. And there's even a video I've seen of Steven Spielberg talking about how they're going to be making movies and that actors will go wherever there are movies. And to a certain degree, he was right. I mean, they did build Universal, they built Disney. Uh, uh, Johnny Depp made a film here. Um,
And where are you located?
I'm in Orlando.
Oh, you are in Orlando. Okay.
So there was a brief time in the 90s when it looked like it was happening. Tom Hanks made a movie here, or made an HBO series, from Earth to Moon, I think it was. Leonardo DiCaprio made a movie
Mm.
here. Wesley Snipes made a movie here. It was a very small but growing. It looked like it was going to happen. Nickelodeon was right down the street from me at Universal. And then those incentives that we never really got, they went to North Carolina and
And Atlanta's
Canada.
a big destination
Yeah,
too.
eventually there became a Hollywood East, and it's called Atlanta, which is a very thriving,
Yeah.
Tyler Perry's just killing it. I mean, I've driven by that studio, and I believe it's bigger than almost every studio except for Universal. And so all that to say, I just kept plowing away with every change as the Avid came in. I learned how to do nonlinear editing, and then it was Final Cut. Now I edit on Premiere. So I
Mhm.
became kind of like that film school guy where I'm producing, directing, shooting, editing. And I've done, everything from a documentary on camouflage art to um, uh, being a stringer for somebody would call me up when I lived in Iowa and they're like, there's the largest immigration rate in Postville, Iowa. Can you get in your car and go to that? And I did that. And I did stuff for Google and Subaru, can you come to Kenny Bunkport? And so there was, it's been exciting, but as I watched YouTube kind of start taking over, originally, I had some clients that when I said, "Do you want to do some YouTube stuff?" This is early, like 2006, seven. Oh no, that's a bunch of teenagers sitting on their bed and whatever. But eventually, I saw YouTube growing, growing, growing. I think I probably even recorded a few back in the day, 2010, 2011. But I thought, man, this is a lot of work. I don't see the payoff here.
Yeah.
And I think when Casey Neistat hit in 2015,
Oh, sure.
all of a sudden people started saying there's a way to monetize this. And
Absolutely.
I felt like, man, I'm missing it. I actually went and got a, master's degree in digital journalism, and that's what coincides with your class because I
Oh,
was like, okay,
wow.
I'm going to look at a different way of doing this. And University of South Florida at St. Pete had this program. So I was doing it. I got a bump. I work at a college as a multimedia producer. So I got a bump in pay for doing that. But I started looking at the lay of the land and I was putting it all together and I was doing every class I could on understanding YouTube. Meanwhile, Casey's just posting a video every day
Yeah.
and just eventually getting millions and millions and millions. And if you've ever seen the plane one where he got like 75 million views, where he did like a $25,000, this is what a $25,000
I remember
flight
I
is
saw it.
like.
And I
And it
remember
was,
following when it was he and his brother, and they did that first one that was a video through New York on their bikes,
yes.
trying to get Apple to acknowledge that the battery sucked or something like that.
Yeah. And so all along I'm looking at like this guy he didn't go to film school. He didn't go to college. I don't know
He
if
just went for it.
I don't think he finished I don't think he finished high school. He just was creating stuff and
Yeah.
and then found a way to make it work. And he's kind of the godfather of YouTubing, I guess they call it. But so I'm kind of studying traditional multimedia journalism, thinking, man, seems like old school compared to what's going
Mm.
on. And I
Mm.
signed up for your class. I think it was in 2017 or 2018. And I was kind of, when you do online classes, sometimes you're taking multiple classes and you're not
Sure.
plowing through it. And the goal in 2018, when I got my master's, my final project was to take a blog I had done. And I thought this would be simple. So this is for everybody that's thinking, oh, I'll just do this next month or this year. So
Or by
2008,
Friday.
yeah, 2000, if you can do it, just do it. If you got that kind of chutzpah, I encourage you to do it. As you say, don't overthink it, because I was way overthinking it. And because I have a production background, there's an old saying that your strength is your double weakness. And because I
Yeah.
can light and shoot and edit, I have all these things that made it
Yeah.
cumbersome instead of just hitting record.
Yeah.
And so at the end of 2018, my final project was take my blog. I was working with my advisor and I turned my blog into a book, which took a long time. I started the blog in 2008. So you can see this journey's taken a long time.
Yeah.
So 2018, I got the book done, got it published through Amazon. It's called Screenwriting with Brass Knuckles. And then the professor said, I want you to record 5 videos as well. So I recorded them and I had a teleprompter and I'm trying to read the teleprompter and I'm the only one in it. And I did it enough that I sent it to him and I got my master's and I was done, but I didn't feel confident enough that I could do this as a regular YouTube thing. And every year, 2019, 2020, man, we got a pandemic. This is when I'm going to do it. 2021, 2022, and 2023. And I'm keep revisiting your videos and a few other videos. And and it was the end of December. And I think my wife finally said, "You're never going to do it." And that was what I needed. I needed that
The
push.
challenge.
And then I finished your class and I just pushed through it. And I was like, all of the notes, I have some of the highlights here. And it was, the Fox and Sox book, the reading 10 minutes a day out loud, which I haven't done, but your confidence, your energy, don't overthink it. The body language video that you had on from Amy. This feels silly. That's a direct quote because that's where I was at the end of December,
Yeah.
2023. I was like, I can't do this. This is so silly. And what are my friends going to think? And my friends aren't going to think anything because they're not going to watch it. I mean, and the ones that
Not
do, I will
necessarily,
say,
not
I did put it on
necessarily.
Facebook because I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I got to start putting it out there. And I got the first one launched on January 1st, which I got it done. And my goal is to do two a month. So right now I've done four for the first 2 months of this year. And then I'm
Amazing.
last night, but and I overthink it. I overproduce it. I look at your stuff when you kind of say, um, you do 35 in like 3 hours. And I'm like, I want to get there.
Oh, but you
And
have to know that I mean, I have so much practice. So it's not
sure,
even fair for me to say that. I literally, the first time I made my very first course, it was excruciating. And I sat there. There's one video and I have to include it inside the class where it's my outtake video. I don't know if it's in the class, but my husband who edits them, by the way, so I also have
okay,
a huge benefit and then I'm not tasked with
that's
editing
nice.
as well, but he did a reel of all of my outtakes. And in the beginning, you see these like, I mean, really basic video, and I'll be, right at the end, and then I'll sneeze and I'll be like, I just ruined that whole take because I had to sneeze and I'm 7 minutes in. Or like I'm sitting there waiting for the bird to stop and I'm like annoyed that there's a bird. I'm like, stop it. Stop.
Yeah,
Or like
yesterday I went to record something, a pickup line, and all of a sudden I live in a condo, and all of a sudden they start doing the leaf blower thing. And I'm just
totally.
as long as Robert Rodriguez, the filmmaker, said whenever he talks to filmmakers, they always show him his film and then they talk about this would have been better if this. And he said the job is nothing ever goes as planned. And
Ding,
that's
ding,
what I
ding,
had to
ding.
work over. And I have the benefit of, I've written like 3,000 blog posts now, and I really wanted to get it off the page. And so the one I just did is, can screenwriting be taught? And
Mm.
I wrote it years ago, and I no longer do the word for word. I do have a teleprompter where I have the direct quotes, but then I just have bullet points I use. And then
Cool.
because I know how to edit, I'm like, okay, I can cover that with B-roll. And eventually I do want to get to the point of where, you know, um, I'm more Alexa like and just kind of like what I'm doing here, which
You're
is
doing exactly it. That's what I just want to point out. So, a couple of things. Like, one, I just love your perseverance. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, what have you learned about yourself in this journey? Because at the end of the day, you are someone that I'm just seeing someone who is enormously creative, resilient, flexible, um, honest, like humble, like I mean, it's not easy to sit here and admit, how you're feeling and what's going on, but here you are, like really just being like, this was my journey. What I see also is to really own that as a celebration, that this is actually the story of success. And when we get over ourselves and we release the idea of like, what will people think of me? They're going to be amazed because most people do nothing. Most people don't even have the thought that they want to put anything out in the world. They just look at, they sit there behind their keyboards or they're texting and they're commenting, and they can just be, kind of passive engagers. Or, in some cases, people even put up fake personas. They have avatars because
Right.
it's too scary in this world of like public opinion to put yourself out there. So like hero's journey for you to say, I have this craft and I'm going to be creative with what's going to come up. But really what I want to ask you before we talk about other stuff is, what have you learned? Like what's the learning that has come as part of your journey that you're going to acknowledge in yourself? Like what have you gained by this experience of stepping in and actually finally creating videos?
I think the biggest thing is just like, I can do this, because I think when you're 18 years old and you're doing some videos in high school, you think, you know, I can do this. You're so full of confidence. And then as you start, it's the same as sports. I played sports before I got into this. And when you're in high school, you're like, hey, I play baseball and football, and I'm all conference or whatever you are. And then you go to the next level and it's like, I'm nobody, and even the guys that are in college, when they get to pros, they realize I'm nobody. I mean, there's a big pyramid. That's probably the big thing I've learned. And at the top of the pyramid, there's Steven Spielberg. And what happens is you start out down here, and then you start rising up and you get knocked down. And I think all Rocky stories are kind of about going up those stairs. And I think what I've realized is there's very few people up here. I mean, we look at people, if you're one of your kids, or, you know, plays the guitar or drums or basketball and wants to be LeBron James, everything's way up here. And as you go just a little bit higher, you realize I can't get there. But what you don't realize is like there's a whole lot of good stuff that happens right in here. This is where most people
Amazing
live.
stuff. Amazing
And
stuff. I know.
and so I think what I've learned is, um, I think you talked about it. Let me see if I can find it here, where it was kind of like enjoy the small wins.
Mhm.
So I'm just having fun, just getting them done,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
coming up with the creativity of last night. I was editing and I got this idea, and I was pulling this video down and putting it in. And I thought, ooh, it's even better than when I originally recorded it. So right now it's like putting together a film. Back when I was shooting film in film school, I think I did 3 films because film was expensive. I did 3 films in high school. I mean, in college, because you had to cast them and write
Yeah.
them, and
Huge.
and it was expensive. Well, I've done 4 videos in 2 months, so I've done more in 2 months than I did in film school in a certain sense. So I think that's the great thing. It's just the learning curve of doing it, and just knowing that it's just fun, and people have been more encouraging than I thought they were. There's a Eagles documentary where Glenn Fry is kind of on the rise up, and he talks to Bob Seger, who's at that point already a rock star. And Bob Seger says to him, Glenn, you're never going to be a rock star until you write your own songs, because Glenn was only doing covers at that time. And Glenn said, well, what if they're bad? And Seeger says, oh, they're going to be bad. But the only way to get good
Good.
songs is to do the bad ones. And so that's stuck with me as well. Like I
Yeah.
think they say that the average YouTuber does 10 videos before they quit, because you're expecting to see Casey Neistat numbers.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
Marquez Brownlee says, you don't want anybody watching for the first 150 to 100. And Mr. Beast said, don't even think about views until you've done 100 videos. And so all of that plays into what you said of
Yeah.
enjoy the small wins.
Yeah.
And I think in investing, Warren Buffett says, just hit singles. And so all of that plays into just
Yeah.
get rid of your big dreams about being Steven Spielberg and LeBron James, and just try to be the best you can and see where it takes you. And so right
Yeah.
now I feel like, you know, I'm committed in my mind to do 100 of these, and
Great.
then I'll spin off. It's a very small niche market. And then I kind of, because I live in Orlando, I think, oh, there's so many travel and lifestyle videos I could do. And
Okay.
what you think is your weakness, because everybody, whoever's watching this, you think you're too old, you're too young. You have all of these hurdles that you throw in front of yourself. But then you start watching videos and you watch people that load their dishwashers and get 9 million views. And you're like,
It's
wow, that was
bizarre. I mean, all of the concepts that we grew up with like how to do it correctly, none of that applies. It literally, like, none of it applies anymore. So, and I also think to go back to sort of what you've gained by this experience, I was just talking to somebody and she said, you don't take any of the material things with you when you leave the planet, but when you overcome your fears or you overcome your perceived limitations and you build those muscles of confidence, you take that with you. You really do. Like the evolution of your being. This is my philosophy. I don't always lead with this, but this is my philosophy. So you cannot measure success by those metrics on YouTube. That's just one tiny, tiny, tiny little metric. You saying yes to you showing yourself what you're capable of, priceless. It's priceless. And that's why in the evolution of my work, I always keep coming back to confidence and my commitment to teaching people to believe in themselves because that's everything. You may be a YouTuber, you may win an Academy Award, you may do a bunch of different things. You may end up meeting a fabulous new friend because you're out on the streets of Orlando documenting dynamite diners. And you could have like a whole new friendship that you never knew about simply because you're in alignment with your intentions, with your flow, with your commitment. And that is the energy precisely what we need more on the planet. And here's where I'm going to go a little bit weird and show a side of myself that I don't normally do. But your videos are containing that energy too. Your presence is containing that energy too. The energy that you're bringing into your home as you commit to work on your videos is actually affecting the people in your life, whether you have a family or your wife or your friends or whatever. And this is what I don't think people understand is that when you commit to your dreams or your wishes, you're actually creating a very positive force in the world. And this is the other metric of success. And this is why, I'm just like you. I've had many times in my career as a content creator where I've been, thinking to myself, I am definitely doing this wrong. Wrong. I am doing it wrong. And when I initially started with Udemy, for example, I consider Udemy a publishing partner. But back in the day, I discovered Udemy very randomly. I was like, first of all, like the only woman putting out a class. I was in the professional development space, and it was a bunch of dudes teaching coding. And the gentleman who was helping me build my website, he just said, I found this platform and we can hack their players to put the course on your own site. Because my first class was Speak Up, Stand Out. And I was like, cool, whatever. He said, but we have to also put your class on their platform for sale. And I was like, cool, whatever. He said, but it's a bunch of coders, a bunch of dudes. And I was like, okay. So it just started this slow, slow, slow thing, and at one point, I think when I had 20,000 students, they kept on changing their pricing structure. Their
right.
business has evolved so much in the, like, I don't even know, 12 or 13 years that I've been with them, that I kept on thinking to myself. So then all of a sudden, these 5-hour classes, they were selling for like $10. And I said, I am like the dumbest lady in the whole world. What am I doing? And I was so frustrated. And I have people selling their courses for their master classes and their this and that. And then I got busy and I just made no decision. I just let it be. And then over time, I kept on making classes. And then they asked me to make classes for them for a Udemy for Business program. And then fast forward, and it's like 200 and whatever, 25,000 students now. And you're
Wow.
just
Wow.
like, so sometimes, even though we think as creators or as individuals that we're doing it wrong, or that, like, everyone's got it figured out but me, it is so not true. Nobody has it figured out. No, nobody, nobody. And And yet the commitment is there to just keep on creating, keep on being in service, keep on showing up, keep on iterating. I started a whole new company called Wish Beads. Like I'm redoing my whole Alexa Fisher site right now. Like we're always iterating. It never stops. It just never, never, never stops. So, have fun. But be your best cheerleader. Be your best cheerleader because that's what I was so flippin' proud of when you sent me your video and I was like, "Oh my God, here's this guy published his video." Yes. So,
I was
love
I
it.
was I was definitely on the slow train, and it's I would say to anyone out there that was thinking about doing it is, everybody talks about, a niche market and stuff like that. And obviously because I had gone to film school and had started a blog on screenwriting, which somebody had said, "Why don't you try blogging?" I was like, "Okay, I'll do that for a year." And here I am 13 years later still doing it, and it became
Amazing.
what I flow into this. And I don't know if it'll eventually lead to a teaching job or whatever. I know I've been asked to speak places. I've made a little bit of money, and you realize the layers of, the online classes, and it gets overwhelming when you think about trying to do it all. And at
Yeah.
some point you're like, I can't do the web, or I don't want to spend money on that. But just acting and doing something, and and I firmly believe, when you've been blogging for 13 years, a couple of the guys that had read my blog when I started, the blog is called Screenwriting from Iowa and Other Unlikely Places. I started in 2008. Well, in 2008, there were two guys that were graduating from University of Iowa that wanted to be filmmakers, and I can't take credit for their success, but they did, read my blog, and they eventually, when I uh, wrote the book, they wrote the forward to it, and it's the filmmakers that wrote A Quiet Place. So,
Wow.
so yeah, that was just quirky little things like that
So
happen,
good.
and you know that even 10 years from now, I mean, people that are 13 years old today weren't even born when I started the blog. And so I think that same way with YouTube and just getting it out there. And growing up in Florida, I grew up just a huge fan of Jimmy Buffett. And it was just that lifestyle. It's like, man, I want to do what that guy. I can't play the guitar and I can't sing, can't write songs, but video became my ticket to
Yeah.
travel all 50 states and go overseas. And it's just been a joy. And I always, just cherish his music, even though he's passed. And I think, man, you can be, like you said, just be infectious and affect people long after you're gone. And so I do
Yeah.
see the video as kind of an extension of, the blog is, I would say, kind of dying out, but people still, you
No,
know,
actually, it's the blog is not dying out. You see the rise of Substack. So everybody's now doing Substack, and I'm like, hi, guess what? That's a blog. That's actually a blog.
so yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a
No,
lot of
no,
repurposing.
your currency, the fact that you have a blog with all of that, the internet still loves blogs. And especially if you have something on your website where you can capture people's emails,
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
invaluable. That is invaluable, like depth and history in real estate. So good
It's
job on
funny. It's
you.
it's funny every once in a while I'll Google something and then my blog will come up. I'm like, oh,
Absolutely, because the
I was
internet's like,
looking for
we
an
know all
expert.
about you, Scott. The
Who's
bots are
this
like
guy?
bing, 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 bing.
And there was, you just learn little things. Like I saw these people that were asking the question, how much do screenwriters make? And I was like, well, if they're asking that, I'll do a blog post on that. And that
Exactly.
became my biggest ever. And
Right.
then one funny story, this is no longer part of the blog because he retooled his website, but I started seeing all these people come in from tomcruise.com. And I'm thinking, well, that must be just somebody that has bought his name at one point. But sure enough, it was tomcruise.com. And I don't know his people that do it. But I had written some nice things about Tom Cruise because he was originally from Ohio and Kentucky. And or he had spent some time in Ohio and Kentucky, as did Johnny Depp and George Clooney at one time. I think they all lived in Kentucky at one time, like one
Oh,
year
wow.
where three big names. So I'm a big fan of talking about where people come from unlikely places. And I realize now that unlikely places is where most things come from. You know, Dylan came from northern Minnesota, and there's something special I realize about coming outside of New York or LA or Miami, where you're just in a cornfield in Iowa, and you're taking in a lot of interesting influences. And now, you know, uh, Scott Breck and Brian Woods, who wrote A Quiet Place, they said if we were coming up now, we wouldn't even move to LA. We would just make films in Iowa
Yep.
and find a way to make a go out of it. And I don't know what is going to happen with movie theaters and whatever. And
Yeah.
I don't know what the next, at some point YouTube might be like MySpace. But I think somebody in all of these classes I was taking, because I was taking a lot over the last 5 years, trying to figure this out and try to push myself over the finish line. It was stop consuming and start
Start
creating.
creating.
And that's where I was in December, is as I
Yes.
coincided with your class of just,
Yes.
and when you stop looking at Instagram and Facebook and watching, it's I'm like anyone else. It's like I have Netflix and Amazon, but I'm not interested in a lot of what's there. I'm watching a documentary right now on typewriters, which
From
I
Tom
just
Hanks.
found by I was looking for an interview of Sam Shepard because I mentioned him, and Sam Shepard said, "I wasn't born knowing how to write a play." I mean, the
Yeah.
guy has had he had a fabulous career, but he's
Yeah.
when I'm talking, I'm encouraging people like, can you teach screenwriting? There's a lot of people that believe, yeah, you can learn how to drive a car and throw a baseball, but writing is somehow different. And I
Yeah.
don't think it is. I think it's how well you do it in that pyramid again is going to decipher a few things, but you can learn. And obviously, Sam Shepard learned how to write
Yeah.
a play, and eventually, became a uh, Oscar nominated actor on top of being a screenwriter and a playwright, Obie
Yeah.
winning. I think he won 10 Obies as a
Yeah.
as
He
a
was so
playwright.
profound. So profound.
And
I want to throw something and an idea out there, and I'm going to be adding a module inside the course because I do believe that YouTube is here to stay, and I believe that they are
looks
giving,
like it.
yeah, and I believe that they're giving social a run for its money because what YouTube has is the power of search. And specifically, they are doing a tremendous amount of emphasis on YouTube Shorts. So I have a challenge for you, Scott.
Okay.
I think that you make exceptionally gorgeous, beautiful, in-depth videos that can be the primary basis for your YouTube channel. And in this module, and I will put links to all of where people can find you and see your videos and subscribe and all kinds of good stuff. But I also think that you are a wonderful conversationalist. And I think that it might be interesting to play around with this muscle of throwing your phone up, just with, on the
Mhm.
vertical position and be able to make shorts that are maybe some like unlikely spots in Orlando,
Yeah.
things that you could check and see. So like do it strategically, just strategically. What are people searching for, Googling, to see like cool places to eat in Orlando or, things off the beaten path or whatever. I mean, I'm saying this just because of your
Mhm.
location and you have so many people like Googling all of that or your favorite, I mean, just sort of like insider information and just play around because again like it's taking it and I'm intentionally not making it about screenwriting because it
Mhm.
feels as though your muscle for being like meticulous with that might kind of make you feel like you want to produce it, but if
Right.
you were, let's say, if the tone of it was like you had really good friends who are coming to Orlando and you were going to be out of town, okay, this
Right.
is the setup. They're coming. You're going to be out of town. And you're like, listen, when I'm out and about, I'm just going to shoot you some quick little like tips about things that you should check out while you're here. That's the tone. Literally, that's the tone. So if you wanted to, and my only little sneaky thing that I do use, and I think it's in my equipment guide,
Yeah, I saw that video.
is this little plug-in pop iPop microphone. This sucker has
Mhm.
saved me. I just was
Mhm.
filming some testimonials at a retreat that I was on last weekend at Sea Ranch in California, and the winds were howling. And I'm like, oh, it won't be a problem. I got this thing.
Yeah.
And I literally put it on, and people were giving me testimonials about an experience I led there. And it was as casual, like I didn't let people think about it. I was like, hey, would you mind sharing, some of the things that you told me personally? Like, oh yeah, no problem. We stood outside, clipped a little thing on. They just spoke for a minute, done. So Scott, if you can just hammer out like 10 of those, you don't have to post them, but I bet they're going to be awesome.
It's
That's it.
that
That's
no,
the challenge.
that's where I'm hitting. Here's what I printed out from your class. It's the little. This is in my car now. The little thing that
Oh, the
sticks.
mount.
Yeah, the mount.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely. I think this first iteration with this screenwriting filmmaking is just getting this out. But I'm definitely thinking of it's what's so funny is not only a 5 year journey to get the first YouTube kind of this channel going, but growing up here, and I actually grew up before Disney was built in '71,
Wow.
and this was nothing. We had Gatorland and a go-kart place, and
Wow.
no professional teams. We barely had indoor plumbing and air conditioning, and and I couldn't wait to get out of here. So Miami and LA became the place. And as I'm kind of thinking of this master plan of, screenwriting, filmmaking, just get into it because I have all this content. But I realize that when I do searches, that the number one place that people want to come in the world is Orlando, Florida, because of Disney and Universal. I am literally within 10 minutes of Universal. They're building Epic Universe, which I just found out about. Disney
Yeah.
is probably 20 minutes away. The beaches, we had SpaceX go up, and I realized like, oh, I thought I was in the middle of nowhere growing up as a kid, and now I realize, well, we have a lot of people moving here from California and
Yeah.
New York, and all of a sudden I realized, yeah, maybe this is the long-term goal is to be able to just do it on a phone and spontaneous.
It's literally, Scott, it's the only thing I'm suggesting is one, I really want you to challenge yourself to just see how to do it the opposite of the way that you do it,
Right.
because that ease will then trickle back into your other thing. One is not better than the other, but it's a different flavor of a muscle for you. So I want to give you that encouragement. I also think that, as you just said, you're tapping into energy that's already happening. These are
Hmm.
eyeballs that, someone who's going to Orlando already is like into like magic and make believe and experiences. Likely there are people that may want to become writers. They can
Hmm.
write their own magic, who knows? But there's something about that traction that could be good. And then the only other suggestion that I'll make with this is absolutely put a crazy deadline to it. So let's say today is Thursday. By Monday, you have to do one. You just have to
Okay,
do one.
I can do
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Just do one because
How long
I
are they?
think,
Because your videos were 3 to 5, and I was like, somebody else said the ideal uh, algorithms right now are. I was hearing from a guy who edits for a big YouTuber, and he said right now 3 to 5 is kind of the
well, and I
golden.
think if I'm not
I've been shooting
mistaken,
for that.
if I'm not mistaken, YouTube shorts are 1 minute. One
Okay, so
minute.
yeah, that's the YouTube regular videos. The shorts, I think they have a max. Do they have a maximum of 2 minutes or something, or
I
is it one?
thought they could be one, they could be two. And this is a challenge that I'm making for myself. Like I am understanding now that the power of search is in shorts. So I'm
Okay.
both exploring how to go back and take so much of my content. I have more content than it's like obscene. I'm like a digital hoarder. But how do I take old content and cut them down to 1 minute,
Yes.
1 minute chunks? But then also, how do I do little like new things that I'm creating that I think are fun? I'm playing with apps. I have one filter that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like maybe I could make the whole thing look like a cartoon. Like maybe that would be fun. Like I'm trying to make it fun for myself, because if I make it fun for myself, I'll do it. If it feels like work, I won't do it. I just know myself. So my challenge to you, it's only because it's not that I'm so convinced that you need this as an output. You need this as an exercise to just
Uh-huh.
give yourself some new muscles. And then the perk is it'll probably bring a ton of traffic to your channel. So
Would that be a separate channel though with the shorts?
I think you should drive it all to your own channel. I think you can think of it in terms of playlists. So you can have
Mhm.
playlists that are like you can link it to be like, the theme is unlikely, so there's this unlikeliness to it. So
Mhm.
this could be like your story. So you could have videos, you could think of like that introducing people to who you are. And then eventually maybe you link these shorts to like inspiration for you as a filmmaker, or
Mhm.
how do you use your environment to inspire ideas for your next script? But really, the minute I tell you to do something related to screenwriting, your other part of your being is going to be like, it's got to be that, like, you're like assuming all the other stuff, which is great. But
Right.
my charge is, imagine you're just telling a friend, you're coming to Orlando. I'm going to hook you up with some inside scoop. So you don't want to miss this. And you know what, Scott? Maybe I'm going to do the same thing. I people always ask me, I live in Santa Monica. People ask me, what should I do in LA? And I said, oh, forget the guidebooks. I'm going to tell you about this or that and whatever. So my challenge right back to you will be like accountability buddies. I'll do the
Okay.
same thing. Okay?
Yeah,
So
that's
just a little
good. I think
charge to be like, hey, welcome to my world. In my
they
world,
had
this is what I pay attention to. In my world, yeah.
I went to is about 2 weeks ago. I they have a over in Daytona Beach, about an hour away. They have a lighthouse. I had never gone to the lighthouse, and I was like, uh, I have some time. I'm going to go to the lighthouse. I'm going to walk up the lighthouse, and I was doing exactly what you said. I was shooting this way, and
Yeah.
taking stills, and thinking, how could I do a video right here? And I didn't do it, but I shot it. But I think you would have like I was thinking of you. I was like, what would Alexa do? How would she just whip up uh, a thing? And then when the SpaceX went up, I went, oh, wouldn't that be cool? You go do the lighthouse and then you catch, there's no guarantee that the rocket will go up. I mean, this one took several tries because of weather, and there's no guarantee that you'll get the cloud and it'll be clear. But I started thinking that way. And I'm so inspired by young YouTubers that are just doing crazy stuff. And one of my friends that I met, I directed a project probably 20 some years ago, and I got to know him. And his daughter was home for, this is an encouraging story to for you and others watching, is she was going to New York for fashion, and COVID hit and she had to come home, and she's like, great, I'm not in New York, I'm not around, it's like my career's over. This is where she is at 20 years old, like,
Yeah.
her first crash, right? And so she's home and bored, and she takes her mother's clothes and just goes outside and tries them on. That is now her full-time job.
Uh-huh.
But she's doing it for Kate Spade now and other big names that I don't know.
Unbelievable.
And I look at her videos, and it's just people send her clothes, and she will do it where I think she has a boyfriend who knows how to do shooting and whatever. So she's like, tells her people, I'm going to Greece. And then all of a sudden it becomes a bidding war. And then her imagine being in Greece, and she's tall and very attractive. And all of a sudden the boyfriend's flying the drone, and it gets like a million hits in the first hour. And then I think her way of making a living is she gets a percentage of the sales of that dress. And
Yeah.
it's so what started out just a couple of years ago as my career is not even starting. I'm not in New York. I'm in the backyard in Orlando, Florida, modeling my mom's clothes becomes a career. And it's
It's
just
unbelievable.
how
And I
quick
will
that
say this,
happened.
we think that because I'm 51, I'm almost 52. I don't know how old you are, but
I'm 10 years above that. Yes.
okay, cool. So we think like, oh, it's too late, like all these young people. No, it's really not. The internet's high. Last time I checked, open to everybody. Your phone, making videos, open to everybody. And in fact, the idea that, it's liberating to just be like, oh, I'm just going to go for it. And I'm the first person who admit that I can overthink things, overplan things. I feel like, my brain is like constantly coming up with new ideas. Like I'll talk to someone and be like, I should do a class about that. But we have to play and we have to give ourselves permission to literally just play, like just throw it out there, because that's one thing that I am inspired by young people is that they're really not trapped in the this is how you should do it. Like that world is gone. Like it really feels very much gone. And if you can be in service to that kind of playfulness, especially for me, I love content that's helping people or inspiring people or encouraging people and things like that. We need that kind of content out there because there's a lot of content out there that's not doing that. So I say play, I say go for it. Put yourself out there and don't overthink it. Just literally do it. The fewer edits as possible. Just put
Yeah.
it out there and see what happens. Like one take. Like that's part of the muscle that I would encourage you to develop because that will make the even the other things so much easier. And then like any of the people that I talk to because I'm connected to lots of different kinds of creators, you have to put all kinds of things out there to see what sticks, to see what people click on, to see where there's some energy and momentum, to see, to stay creative and fluid. And obviously you love that because that's the career that in the life that you built for yourself. So building upon that, just start playing and playing and playing and playing. Have your other plan, do your other plan, but then just
Mhm.
like throw a one take wonder up there. Just see what happens.
A one take wonder. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't got to the one take, but I have, I think you talk about don't do more than three. And so
No more than three.
that becomes my
Oh,
guide rail. I'm like, I'm moving
oh my
on.
God.
I'm moving on.
Oh my God.
And
That's truthfully why I always tell people like no teleprompters. And I'll tell you why. For me, that just sounds like so much work. Like I am a professional actress. At one point, I did a 1 hour, one woman show of James Joyce's Ulysses, the chapter Molly.
wow.
There was no punctuation. I know how to memorize things, but there is no way the amount of things that I want to produce. I know the content. I'm familiar. I've built the content, but the speaking of it, if I had to write out a script and put it on a teleprompter and worrying about it being perfect, A, I don't think it would be as engaging. And B, it's too much work.
Yeah. Well, that's where the production background is. I've been using teleprompters for other people, for professors or corporate people for 20 years.
Yeah.
And when I did the thing back in 2018, I was like trying to monitor the speed and so even though I got it done, you're trying to do it on autopilot and it's scrolling through and there's even I use Prompter People, which is out of Burbank, and
Uh-huh.
they have a foot thing, but I realized that I couldn't use the teleprompter as a traditional teleprompter, but I will put like if I know a quote from Glenn Fry or
Yeah.
David Mamet or Diablo Cody, then I can just put the prompt there and that's
Yeah.
enough for me.
Yeah.
And if I want to get the quote, I've just done something. I don't know if it was from your class or not, but I've just done the thing where instead of reading the quote, is all like pull up a piece of paper. So now it even makes it feel
Just read
more
it.
spontaneous.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to I studied
Yeah.
acting for about 3 years in my failed LA career there. And I have tricks up my sleeve. That was all I remember from Tennessee Williams, um, the Glass Menagerie. And actually, Arthur Mendoza was my professor or was my acting teacher in LA. And he had studied with, this is my lineage. He had studied with Stella Adler. So
Oh,
that's,
wow.
you
Nice.
know, that's that. But the video that's in my next video, I pulled just a quick clip from Shikaro, and his star student is um, I forget the actor's name, Alejandro maybe. But anyway, it's like wow, this is like a weird little alternative universe that we had the same acting teacher. He's a big Hollywood movie star at the pop up here, and I'm trying to do YouTube videos. But you have fun with it, and I just saw that quote about a week ago from Um, it was a very, it was a, it wasn't Winona Ryder. It was Natalie Portman.
Mm,
And she was talking about influencers are more famous than movie stars now.
agreed.
And a
And a
couple
lot
of
of
years
young
ago,
people are putting down like what profession do you want to be? And they'll
yeah.
write influencer.
And that is, honestly, if I ended up, I just love production. I mean, I'm fortunate that I look back and I've been able to do this for 4 decades, and now it just feels like, wow, all these tools. I'm back to doing what I did when I was in film school. And if I ended up teaching at a high school, I think that would be a blast. Just
Yeah.
because you could go to a high school. I've
Yeah.
talked to colleges. I said the difference from when I was in college and you can go home tonight and do a video
Yep.
that goes viral. No guarantee that it will, but you
Yep.
have that capability now to be like
Absolutely.
my friend's daughter, where you just do the simplest things, the
And
loading a
boom.
dishwasher. It's are you fit? Is there a need there? And I'd like to think that, I'm just listening to a book on tape right now called Dopamine Nation. And it's like, man, am I going to be part of the problem here if this takes off? But obviously, that's where the eyeballs are. I love movies, but I go to movies a lot less than I used to, and
Yeah.
I'm less enamored with um, with streaming services. And I think the basic premise of Dopamine Nation is that we used to go to movies because that was where the dopamine was. We're going to see some action or some romance or some adventure. And now people are getting it on their phones for better
Yeah.
or worse. And you realize, okay, how can I, like you're saying, how can I do this for the good? How can I
Yeah.
somehow
Yeah.
do
That's where
something
my,
positive with this?
yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
and so that's I just I like I like being around college kids. Um, the students that I meet, a lot of times their parents didn't go to school, and so they're in welding programs, and I'm meeting people that are what you would think of as traditional trade schools. I did a promotional video for a power line company, and the guy's telling me, yeah, a person with a 2-year degree in whatever power lining is, he goes, that person with a couple years experience is going to be making 6 figures. And I'm like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And six
Yeah.
figures in
And
LA
that
is
can't
kind
be
of,
replaced by AI, by the way.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
welding, and you're seeing people I'm not down on college, but I am down on people that dream of going to USC at $50,000 a year. There's a film, I wrote an article on this because I heard it and I was like, I can't believe this. A guy went to NYU for a master's and he had 600,000, he had 300,000 in debt.
Well, I
And
mean, as I have, I'm looking at colleges and it is astonishing. $50,000 is nothing compared to what they actually cost right now. And I think that we really have to pause and think of just really pause. The status quo is not the thing
right,
anymore. And so really thinking about what is in alignment with not only something that lights you up, your gift, your what kind of makes your heart sing, that's probably something that you want to pay attention to, not probably, it most certainly is, but also what's available and not thinking so traditionally about anything. So here again, you stepping into the possibility of making videos and putting yourself out there. Time doesn't even matter. They said the most successful people, the sweet spot. I got to find this quote where I think it was a study about the Nobel Prize winners, or they sort of examined of all the like biggest achieving, most success, the sweet spot, the time wise, 60 to 70.
wow,
And this
wow.
really changes. We think, oh, in your 30s and your 40s, and you're doing this. No, 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 no. The sweet spot for the real mastery, the real achievement comes between 60 and 70. The next bracket, 70 to 80.
Yeah,
Third
I could.
bracket, 50 to 60. So it really is, you're really rethinking timelines here. So you're
Mhm.
in a place where all of the lived experiences that you've had, all of the background and all of that is now time to share. And if you
Yeah.
think of your videos as your way for selfless giving, your way of teaching, your way of passing it, forward, it's really the perfect time. It's a perfect time for you to do it. And
It
then
feel when you're younger, and I understand that, you're chasing so many things, and I've been fortunate to do shoots overseas, and I remember doing a shoot at the time. It was about 12 years ago, and this group in New York, Magnet Media, said, "Hey, do you know anything about film, about food?" And I was like, "Well, I've done some Blue Bunny videos for their online thing, and they're perfect." And all of a sudden, I flew to New York and shoot. I shot Tony Saragusa, who had played football for, I believe he played for the Ravens. And then the next day, I flew down to Miami and I shot Jason Taylor, who had played for the Dolphins. And then the next day, I flew to Dallas and I shot Deion Sanders, who was famous for playing for Dallas and the 49ers and Atlanta, and is now coach of University of Colorado. But it was for a microwavable hamburger. And I remember, Dion was cooking the prime burger, and so it was kind of cool because at that time he had a 28,000 square foot house, and he was making the prime burger. And there was a part of me thinking, well, this is kind of cool. And he signed a helmet for me, which I have in my home office, and that was all cool. But there was a part of me that was like, I don't think either Dion or myself thought that we would be doing a microwavable hamburger spot for the web.
yep,
And so when you've checked off a few things of travel, of this and that, I was fortunate when I was in LA to go on the lots. I was a driver for equipment for some of it, and as a cameraman for some of it, to go on all the lots of ABC and NBC and Disney and Universal and Paramount and get my picture taken, and then you realize, man, it's just that pyramid is just, I'm never going to get up there. And so, yeah, once you've done everything, or at least you've tried, then you can basically say, well, what do I want to do? And that's kind of what
exactly.
I think
The
probably what you're
freedom.
hitting at, people in
Yeah.
their 50s and 60s or 60s and 70s. This documentary that I was watching the other day on typewriters, the guy's kind of retired, but he's repairing typewriters just because he loves it. It's
Cool.
just, he was an old engineer. He's helping people that still like to type. And, Coppola wrote The Godfather on a typewriter and probably still writes on a typewriter. A lot of people still do. I think Tarantino says he writes on a yellow pad. So yeah, it's just once you kind of leave some of the ego behind, and you can appreciate when people do things. I think when I was younger in LA, I was always a little bit jealous when it's like, why did they get that role? Why did they get that Dos Equis commercial?
Yeah.
It's like I was up for that. And and I remember I got my picture taken by a photographer in LA at the time. His name was Art Pasquale. And I thought, man, I am it. I'm studying acting, and Art Pasquale is going to take my headshot. And he didn't do headshots. He did like the Broadway and all this stuff, the store. And his assistant takes the headshot and goes, "You kind of have an egg-shaped face." And I was like, I had never thought of a oval face, but I've never forgotten that. I was 21 years old, and I'm
So
like, well,
funny.
I guess I'm not going to be a model or an actor or whatever. And you get beat down,
Yeah.
and it was very refreshing to come back to that quote from Natalie Portman, where it was kind of like, she's like, I'm looking at doing more independent stuff now. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I mean, my dream world, I do all this, and somehow somebody's like, can you make a movie for $100,000? And it's like, yeah, give me $100,000
Sure.
and
Let's
and
go.
and I'll do it. And so it's fun. I mean, it's all just keeps funneling into it. I
Yeah.
mean, I think
Yeah.
your class was just so instrumental in December of just kind of shaming me into like, I got to do
Don't
this. And
shame anybody.
I'm critiquing your videos. I'm like, well, because one of them you do a behind the scenes video. I'm like, well, I got a better camera than that. And I got better, this and
And now,
that.
Scott, I do a lot of filming just on my phone.
Yeah.
I've even like downgraded for speed and ease.
I would be
Because the
ashamed to
phones
tell
have gotten better and better. So I said, oh, great. Cinematic setting, done.
you. And for
Perfect.
anybody, this is another thing. For anybody who, is going through your class, is I think a key documentary to watch is Roadrunner about Anthony Bourdain.
Ah,
Because before he did No Reservations and became kind of this big celebrity, they actually show that these two producers take him on the road because they think maybe we can pitch this as but he sucks. He's just not good. And they're
wow.
shooting and shooting on the road, and they're like, we don't know if we have a show. I mean, and he was so great at the end.
Sure.
Uh, I mean, he was able to go in and just have a conversation,
Yeah.
and it's also a cautionary tale of you can do your dream job and still have, you got to take care of
Yeah.
the mental issues
Yeah, of
and
course.
whatever he had going on in his life. But I think it's a good example of what you say of just you're going to think it feels silly, and I'm sure Anthony Bourdain at some point said I should just go back to being
Yeah. A,
uh,
sh-
um,
a, a chef.
and he even says he's like I wasn't even that good of a chef. He goes I was the kind of guy that made 300 omelets at a Holiday Inn on Sunday afternoons. So he kind of knew his place, and it kind of came later. I think he was maybe in his 40s when it took off for him. And but
So
I love that thing of like he and the producers were like, this is not working, and he didn't have the benefit of going through your class. That would have
it
saved
would
some
help him.
time. But I'm very
Well,
thankful for your
oh,
for your class, and that I stumbled upon it, and that I finally finished it, and that it shamed me to just doing it, because literally 2.5 months ago I was like, you know what? If I just walk away, no one is going to know. No one cares. No one's asking for these videos. And it was part your video and part my wife saying, I don't think you're the YouTube type.
you're show her with that viral
It was a
action.
little bit. I needed that chip on my shoulder to
That's
say I
great.
couldn't do it.
Sometimes
So
we all need a gentle nudge. So,
it is.
Scott, I have just adored our conversation. I am
Thank
super
you.
proud of you. I look forward to seeing what you produce. And of course, I'm already a subscriber, but can you just tell everybody where they can find you, your blog and your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. I think it's I think if I think it's filmmaking with brass knuckles. I think if you just put that in YouTube, it'll come up. I think I did buy the domain name. I might have bought that years ago too. It's filmmaking with brass knuckles.com, and the blog is screenwriting from Iowa and other unlikely places, and I think that's under screenwritingfromiowa.com. I haven't figured out all these things. I wish my website, which is scottwsmith.com, I'm trying to figure all this out.
We
But
all are.
but the
But
thing is
I
just
will put links into the description so people can find you that way too.
but Fox and Socks. I mean, there's just so many takeaways that were in that, and I nobody has seen all this stuff. I have this little cave where I have my Fox and Socks.
I love
and,
it. See, there's a
and
video. That's a 1 minute video where you can say, "Hey, this is what I do here behind the scenes." Blah, blah, blah. I love it.
it is.
I
I
love
I
it.
have been trying to do that. I For the last one, I did a little bit behind the scenes, and I was like,
Cool.
it is really where you Casey Neistat said being ADHD is like his superpower. And I came up in an age where nobody diagnosed anything. It's like just go out and play. And
Yeah.
so
Get
so
out of
and I
here. Talking
and
too
I think,
much.
fortunately, I think I bypassed all the medicine by learning photography and video and just doing it all. And so, yeah, it's the one place where if you have that kind of mind where things are just firing, it's like film and video and YouTube and all this stuff is great, because if you can channel it and learn it all, and it just
Yeah.
it just takes time. But I never, for anyone out there that thinks they're too old. I did not work on a computer until I was 32 years old. I did not own a cell phone until I was 40.
Wow.
And you just get 1% better is what people say on doing these videos. Just try to get 1% better.
Yeah.
And don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do. That's kind of an old cliche. But thank you for
Amen.
your time,
Oh, thank you,
and
Scott. This has been a real pleasure, and I'm
cutting
excited
the
to
short now.
introduce you. Yeah, but I'm excited to introduce you to the students, and it actually is a pretty big audience. And I think I mean, I'll also put this on my YouTube channel. So there will be all kinds of student highlights. So, and
I
if you're
hope
a
it's
student who
helpful.
has a video to share, just wait. If you send it to me, you might just end up right here.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Well,
right,
thank you
Scott,
for your
stay
time.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care.